Oh man, you guys, I really wanted this to be a different video. Like, I wanted to make a deck profile, say how good this was going to be, say how amazing this deck was, the damage output is crazy. But the thing is, it's just not enough. The sheer amount of damage that this deck can put out is just not enough to get you what you need. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time checking me out, thank you, I appreciate it. Leave a like, or don't. Either way, thank you for stopping by, thank you for checking out the video. If you're returning, then you're truly amazing. In fact, return for another, and another, and another. It makes my heart happy. Today we're going to be talking about Klawf, and is it a good deck? Does this deck actually have potential, or is it one of those decks that only tops every now and again because it's just a weird deck, and sometimes decks do that. We're going to be going over my deck profile, what I think about the deck, the strengths of the deck, the hard matchups, and so much more. So let's get right into the video. So for the interest of full transparency, I am using Alejandro's build from the Joinville Regional. He got third place with it. Congrats to him for that. This deck takes a lot of skill to pilot and a lot of luck for it to work out the way you want it to work out. We'll go ahead and get right into the deck profile, and I'll explain how these cards work in conjunction with one another, but it's important to know all the moving pieces, so we'll get right into the deck profile. 3 Klawf, 2 Brute Bonnet, 1 Ursaluna, 1 Electrode, 1 Pecorant, Luminion, Squawkabilly, Pheasantipity, and Radiant Sneasler. 4 Arven, 3 Boss's Orders, Chorus's Tenacity, Carmine, Iono, 4 Nest Ball, 4 Ultra Ball, 3 Switch Card, 2 Night Stretchers, 2 Trekking Shoes, Secret Box, Heavy Ball, Energy Lotto, Lost Vacuum, 4 Boosters, 3 Binding, 2 Rescue Board, 1 Super Effective Goggles, 4 Sealed Stone, 2 Town Store, and an Artisan. The only energies this deck runs are 4 Double Colorless and a Jet Energy. Every single card in this deck is building up to one main board. The deck doesn't do anything else but build this one board. Brute Bonnet with Capsule in the bench, and Klawful with a Moochie and a Double Colorless in your active. Because Klawf has an attack called Unhinged Scissors, and it's crazy, so I'll put it up on screen real quick and we'll go over it. Well, technically Klawf does have 2 attacks, Boiled Press and Unhinged Scissors. The only one you're going to be using is Unhinged Scissors. And it simply says, if this Pokemon is affected by a special condition, this attack does 160 more damage. Now, if you were to look at Brute Bonnet, its ability is also really cool, and it works super well with Klawf, so we'll put it up on screen and we'll go over it real quick. We use Brute Bonnet for its ability, Toxic Powder. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon has an Ancient Booster Energy Capsule attached to it, you may make both active Pokemon poisoned. So, if you have more than 2 brain cells, you already know what this deck wants to do, right? You get Klawf roided up on poison, and then you start swinging at him for 210 damage. And don't get me wrong, 210 damage is a lot of damage. That'll knock out almost every EX Pokemon, even Charizard, in 2 hits. But the problem with that, right? The problem with the deck, the big issue that you bump into a lot of times, is that it can swing for 210, but Klawf's HP is only 120, so that means you're not going to be able to take the hit. In an ideal scenario, you'll be knocking out things that are not boss monsters for a deck, so that means no fighting Dragapult, no fighting Charizard, no fighting Greninja, none of that shenanigans. It's all about knocking out the Pidgeots and the Luminions and the Rotoms. You almost never want to fight Charizard. You almost never want to fight Dragapult because you're not going to knock them out in one turn, and if they have any energies committed, you're going to lose Klawf. And don't get me wrong, we're going to go over the other key players of this deck, which there's only really one other key player because, like I said before, this deck is a one-trick pony. Like a lot of people say, Charizard is a one-trick pony, but that pony actually has 2 tricks. This is an actual one-trick pony. And with that one trick, it does a lot of damage. And let's go ahead and go over Radiant Sneasler because it is important to making the maximum amount of damage actually happen. So let's go over that real quick. Use Radiant Sneasler for his ability, Poison Peak. During Pokemon Checkup, put 2 more damage counters on your opponent's poison Pokemon. So if we're doing all the math here, right? We're sitting it all down. We're doing all the math. You put one poison token on your opponent's active Pokemon, plus the 2 more, giving them 3 tokens, plus the 210 damage. That means you're swinging for about 240 damage every time you attack. And I can already hear you guys rifling through your spare change to build this deck, because if I'm being completely honest, this deck, if you don't run the money cards, costs about $20. That's not a joke. 20 whole dollars. With the only real money cards in the whole deck being Fezandipity and Arven. But before you dig out your quarters to build this deck, let me give you a little bit of insight. This video is going to be a little different than my past ones. The other ones were a lot more in-depth and informative, but this deck doesn't really need like in-depth, right? Because it does one thing. And I do mean it does one thing. I'll put the deck list back up on the screen and I'll show you. Just a quick glance, you can see that every single card in this deck either searches for a key part or draws cards. Trekking Shoes for the draw, Secret Box to pull what you need, Ionos to, unbreak your hand, Squawk ability to unbreak your hand, Carmine to make sure you get what you need in your first turn, for a Sealed Stone to search for your energies, and trust me, we're going to go over that because that's a big problem with this deck. Every single card in this deck, almost, with the exception of a few, Rescue Board, the Bindings, those cards like that, Lost Vacuum, all those cards, they're situational to a point, but pretty much every other card in this deck is a draw card or a search card to get that one engine going. And when you can get the engine going, oh my, it is so good. It is so satisfying to get your Brute Bonnet on board and your capsule going and you get your Klawf and you're active and you've got your energies on it. It's so good. It really is. It's so much fun. Don't get me wrong, I love this deck. I love playing this deck. It's a lot of fun. It's really trollsy, and I do tend to like decks like that. Playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, one of my favorite decks to play was Mystic Mine. So if you're watching this and you know what that is, you probably already hate me a little bit. If you have no clue what I'm talking about, then that's a good thing. Trust me, you don't want to know what Mystic Mine is. But the problem, right, the deck has 2 really, really big issues, 2 glaring issues that make this deck go from being super good to being fun. It's a fun deck to play. And those 2 big issues are your matchups and the amount of cards you need for your engine to actually work properly. Let's refer back to our deck list. That'll be way easier to kind of go over all this. We can both look at it together. So just looking at our deck list alone, you see that we run 2 Brute Bonnet and 3 Klawf. We also run 4 Ancient Capsules and 4 Double Turbo Energy. All 4 of these cards you need in order for this to work properly. They all have to be there. For the bare minimum, for you to do at least 170 damage, you've got to have those cards on board. And in most cases, 170 isn't going to be enough damage. And that's kind of when Radiant Sneasler and the Binding come in handy. But if you're swinging for a maximum of 180 damage, that's really only going to knock out like a Rotom and Luminion. And most good players are thorntoning those or Collapse Colossing those off their board before you even really get a chance to fight them. So again, that's what the whole purpose of the rest of the cards are. The Heavy Ball, the Energy Lotto, the Ionos, the Carmines, Chorus, your Arvens. All of those things are made to get these cards in your hand as quickly as you possibly can. But that means that oftentimes, if I have a Carmine in my hand or I've got the option to go into Squawk ability, I almost always have 2 of the pieces I need. I either have Double Turbo Energy or an Ancient Capsule, but I don't have the Pokemon I need and no ways to get into them. Or I have the Pokemon I need and I don't have the Capsule and I don't have the Energy. You start every game with 7 cards, regardless of if you start first or if you go second, you're starting your game with 7 cards. And then let's just say, for a little thought experiment, that you also decided you wanted to use Carmine. Well, that means that you're essentially going through 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? You're going through 12 of your cards already. And oftentimes I find if I'm doing that, I'm desperate. If I'm tossing my whole hand to make this happen, that's desperation speaking. That's me on the verge of tears. And I'm like, please, 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 card gods, please give me the cards I need if I'm using Carmine in my first turn that recklessly. And it's the same issue with Squawkabilly. Like, if I have Squawkabilly on board, I almost always have parts that I need. And the thing is that, like, this deck isn't like any other deck, right? There's no way to recur your energy. Once it's in the discard pile, it's there for good. You're not getting that back. You can't get it back with Night Stretcher because Night Stretcher only does basics, and you have no other cards to pull from the discard pile. So once you toss those to the discard, they're gone. Like, that's it. So as I explain this, I'm sure you're kind of already seeing the glaring issue of this deck, and to put it in one word, it's consistency. The deck has a lot of consistency issues, but it's honestly inherently the deck's fault because it's essentially trying to rewrite the way that Klawf wants to be played, because Klawf wants to be played with 2 fighting energy to do boiled press, which would then burn Klawf. Like, that's the actual intention of it, right? But you're bypassing the need to use boiled press at all by poisoning him instead. But in order to make that happen, right, you need consistency to get the other Pokemon you need to your bench to pull off the other half of the combo, because it's 2 engines kind of going at the same time. I deck tested this for weeks. I mean, seriously, like, I played this deck for a super long time because originally my plan was to be like, okay, we're going to take this deck to Master Ball this time, right? And then I quickly learned, my expectations were quickly told to pull up a seat and calm down, little bro, because that is not going to happen. So let's set aside for a moment the inherent issues with the deck. Let's say you get in your opening hand, your 7 cards, you get like the stars and planets align and you get everything that you need. You get your Capsule, you get your Klawf, you get your Brute Bonnet on board, you get your Sneasler in hand, and you're ready to fight. Like, you hear the bell ringing, it's time to throw down. Let's talk about the other problem that this deck has, and that is the matchups and the meta right now. Now, I will say this about the build that we're using for the sake of this video and the build that I've been deck testing, and that's that when Alejandro took this to Joinville, he obviously knew that Charizard was going to be the big issue. Like, with 3 cards in this deck, you can actually one-shot a full health Charizard. Electrode, Super Effective Glasses, and Sneasler. With those 3 cards, you can one-shot full health. It laughs at Charizard. Charizard bows down to the Explodey Grass Ball. And because this deck was built to fight Zard, it does a really, really good job of winning those games. Like, obviously, the guy knew what he was doing when he built the deck. He knew that Charizard was going to be an issue, and he found a really good out to it. And, you know, props to him for being able to do that, because it's a cool little combo that you can do. Let's go on and move on to the other decks that are going to be an issue when you play this deck online, and those are going to be Dragapult, Regidrago, Greninja, literally pretty much any boss monster in any deck that's got more than 250 health, it's going to be a bad time. And I say that because the interactions with this deck want to capitalize on 2 prize cards a turn. But if there is a boss monster you're up against that's got more than 250 health, odds are that's not going to happen. So it ends up becoming an issue later on down the line when your Klawfs keep getting knocked out. And once you run out of those 4, then, I mean, that's it. It's game over. Like, what are you going to do at that point? I have won 1 game with Pekkarunt because using Pekkarunt with Radiant Sneasler and Poison adds 8 total tokens, poison tokens, to your opponent's active Pokemon, so it's burning them for 80 damage. I have won 1 time with that. But generally speaking, once Klawf is gone, the match is over. You can get back Klawf using Night Stretcher, but the issue is, once you've committed your energy, you've committed your energy. And since you only run the 4 and the Jet Energy, which, if we're being real, that's only really a switch out more than anything. You could use it with Blood Moon or Saluna if you wanted to, but generally speaking, you're using that to switch things out in a pinch. So once your energy is committed, it's committed. And sometimes you want to save one for Ursaluna, and if that's the case, then again, you're having to make big boy decisions with whether or not you're going to commit it to another Klawf, or if you're going to wait for Ursaluna. And sometimes you really need the 260 damage that Ursaluna can put out. So energy commitment becomes more and more of an issue, especially as the game goes on, because you either always have to hold on to that 1 energy just in case, and pray to God you don't need it, or go ahead and commit it to Ursa Luna and try to get some prizes early. But overall, speaking of my experience, those are the issues that this deck really has: consistency and matchup. Now with the next set coming out, it could be a little bit better. We could find some cards that can make this a little more consistent, or maybe find a better way to get Unhinged Scissors to be active. But as of this moment, as of October of 2024, this is the most consistent build I can find, and even when it's popping off, it doesn't pop off hard enough. I'm sorry this video was so short. I really wanted it to be different. I really wanted this deck to be one of those big in your face, like, this is the deck, this is a good one, you don't want to pass this up. But it ended up not being that way. It ended up being more of a little casual, little fun encounter, because I quickly learned taking it into ranked that you either really win hard or you really lose, and there's only one of the 4 meta decks that you're really going to be able to win against. And funny enough, it's Teal Mask Ogrepon. And the only reason why you can win so easily against it is because Ogrepon has such low health, and they will always commit their Ogrepons to board. They are fiending for that draw. Seriously, like, I've seen a guy commit 6 energies to 1 Ogrepon just for the draw. They're addicts for the draw. But I mean, like, to end the video out, I just want to say that the deck is fun to play. Don't get me wrong. It's really fun, and I like the mechanic behind it, and I like the Pokemon that are actually in the deck. Klawf is a cool little Pokemon. Generally speaking, the deck just needs more. It falls just shy of being truly amazing, and I hope in the future that this can be a truly amazing deck. It just needs a little something. It's waiting for the right person to come in and make it meta relevant again, just like Alejandro did in Joinville that weekend. So if you made it this far into the video, thank you for checking me out. I appreciate it. We're going to have more deck profiles coming out in the future. Probably going to have more Pokemon videos coming out in the future. More card game stuff. More actual Pokemon Scarlet stuff. You guys have been really supportive so far, and I really do appreciate that. So thank you for watching it till the end. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.